This is Leisha Holmes, and I'm your host on the Recruiters Recruitment Podcast. And I'm always so thrilled when we invite a guest on from across the sea, the United States of America, because a large part of you actually come out from over there. We get our analytics at the end of each year, and we know that about 25% of our listeners are from over in America. So it's always nice to welcome someone from there. And this next guest, we've already been getting to know each other off camera, well, on camera, but without recording, if that makes sense. And we've already had a right laugh. This is Gerry Gadoury, and he's an author, speaker, and founder of RedBeard Solutions, and owner of a rather unusual pet who we might get to meet, actually, so stay tuned. Welcome to you today, Gerry. How are you?
I'm very well. Thanks for having me on the show, Lisha.
Oh, you're very welcome, and it's very nice to have you here. So there'll be plenty of people wanting to know who you are and what you do. So give us an introduction as to you and your business.
Sure. I think like many of us, I came to the recruiting industry sideways. It was never my intention to become a recruiter. It just sort of happened. I'm a former United States Marine. I did signals intelligence in the Marines. Ironically, I spent most of my enlistment in Scotland, which was absolutely
wow. Whereabouts in Scotland?
In the tiny little village of Edsall. So the Navy leased, it's halfway between Aberdeen and Dundee.
Oh, wow. So it's really north. It's beautiful up there. I was up there last summer. It's gorgeous up there.
I mean, the only place I've lived in my whole life where the weathermen were always right. 80% rain, cold wind off the North Sea every day.
Every day you do have to be, no such thing as bad weather, Gerry, just bad clothes. That's what they say.
Exactly. Now you sound German. So,
so you said your son, is your son here? Were you about to say your son?
Yeah, my oldest son, he's actually an AI developer. My oldest son was born in Scotland.
Oh, he's Scottish. So, does he follow his Scottish roots? Does he follow Celtic or Glasgow or someone?
So he looks it. He looks very Scottish. It's funny. So my wife is half Japanese and half Italian. I'm pretty much Northern European mutt is my background. So I've got two kids with dark brown hair and then two kids that are blonde ginger like me. This beard, though it's mostly white these days, was originally red.
Red. My boyfriend's ginger with a growing white beard as well. So
yes.
it ages him, as he always says. So that's very nice. So tell us about RedBeard Solutions, which I'm guessing might come from
these days it's more aspirational, but gray beard doesn't play well in technology, and that's where I do a lot of this. So RedBeard Solutions is a company designed to help typically smaller businesses, startups, early stage business, small businesses to consistently attract, recruit, and retain the best talent in the market, as well as form them into highly performing teams. So we do employer branding work, we do recruiting, and we also do leadership training.
Okay, which all these things combine. So you started off your biography with talking about the fact that you were intelligence within the Marines. So I've heard of plenty of people come from plenty of different backgrounds that have fallen into recruitment. That has to be one of the most unusual ones. So what was your journey from there to the recruitment industry?
I think like most of us, just bad life choices. No, so I did signals intelligence in the Marines, a bunch of other things. I managed to break my neck. I sheared the facet joints off my 5th and 6th vertebrae, and spent the better part of a year doing physical therapy twice a day, getting my mobility back, able to walk and eventually run and do all that stuff again. During that, I went and took classes on software development, which kind of got me in touch with my technology background. Now, quick story, I'm 53. What I'm talking about is 30 years ago, or almost 30 years ago. So this is before the internet was a big thing. This is before I even knew what a staffing agency was. So long story short, in an actual physical newspaper, I read an advertisement for a junior Linux kernel engineer that said on it, "We'll train." So I responded to the ad, set an appointment, went to what I later discovered was a staffing agency. The recruiter who was supposed to meet with me had some type of personal problem and wound up not there that day and forgot to cancel our interview. The branch manager felt bad and interviewed me just out of pity. About 15 minutes into the interview, she said, Mr. Gadoury, you don't really have the technical skills for this job, but have you ever considered a career in recruiting? And that's how I got started.
I absolutely love that story. So almost like, serendipity. They had a personal issue, you happen to be sat there. And I love the fact that you have shown the evolution of my own recruitment career, because I fell into it by opening up a magazine at FMCG. I was working in FMCG sales at the time, really bored. What can I do next? And there it was glaring at me. And I didn't know it was, I thought it was for the company, but it was for a recruitment agency for the recruitment industry. So we've both been in industry a similar amount of time then. So what sort of recruitment did you do?
So in the beginning, general technology, but the funny part was, though I was a good recruiter, I really liked the sales side more.
Yeah.
So I moved over to agency sales, went from full desk to split desk, and ultimately to pure sales for a while. And then wound up just having a lot of success with it. So there were 30 offices in that chain.
Wow.
And I personally outbilled the bottom 5. So
Wow.
I got really good at that part. And then I wound up moving into leadership. And then I ran that the whole New England market for Kelly IT, which at the time was a $6 billion piece of business.
Gosh.
And then from that into management consulting. And that's really how RedBeard was born.
Okay.
I originally did recruiter training and sales training for professional services companies, many of which were recruiting companies, but that evolved into technology services companies, so custom software development houses, things like that, and then into product companies, technology software companies that made actual products. And then I wound up taking senior executive contracts with them. So I'd be like the COO of a company for 18 months, the president of another for 18 months. And that is really where RedBeard came from, because I started to see firsthand how recruiting could be done better, both for the agency and for the end client, by focusing on the whole picture. I can't speak for the UK or for Europe, but here in the US, the recruiting agency model is kind of mercenary. It's the contingency model. It's come in, make the placement, and go away. And that leads to 2 bad outcomes. For the agency, it can be bad because you work on what's closest to the money, but you don't have the time to develop the relationships that allow you success. So you wind up working a lot of garbage orders you know full well you're never going to fill. So the stats here in the US are somewhere around 1 in 14 is an average fill rate for a perm agency, which is horrific. And then on the client side, you get a lot of garbage candidates because that recruiter doesn't have the time to develop the relationship to do a better job. And full disclosure, most clients don't give the recruiters the time they need.
Well, of course they don't. Yeah.
Exactly.
It's self-perpetuating because they don't give the the recruiters the time. So they're going out to farming it to all the other recruitment agencies. And so the recruitment agencies therefore aren't motivated to give it the time because they're up against 10 other agencies. So that's what, the whole system's broken, really, when you describe it like that, isn't it?
I couldn't possibly agree more. I loathe the contingency model for just that reason. It sets the stage for an abusive relationship on both sides.
It really does. Yeah, I agree.
If I take your garbage job order, I'm going to nod, and then I'm going to go know full well I'm going to give it 5% of my attention since it's unfillable. Exactly. And then so I have been hired by recruiting agencies. I've been a candidate. I've run them as a senior executive. I've been a recruiter, a salesperson, and I've used agencies to fill technical roles for my own companies. So I've sat on every seat in the equation. And the problem isn't recruiters. I love recruiters. The problem is the model.
Yeah, I agree.
I could talk about that for hours, but the birth of RedBeard was really a way to do better. So the way that we engage with our clients is like a software SaaS model. It's a subscription model over time. We don't just do the recruiting piece because that's only 1/3 of it. We do the employer branding piece. So we help that company to be in the places where it needs to be. We help them. We support their internal recruiters with our own recruiting teams as much as they need. And then we also do leadership training to teach them to be a lot better at what they do, how to effectively engage, fulfill, and grow people so they don't turn people over. And quick note, the model I used for that is a company called Apicero, which is a MuleSoft consulting company that we grew from 3 people to 9 offices with 2,500 people in 3 countries in
Gosh.
5 years.
Wow.
And were acquired by NTT Data for a 9-figure exit.
Goodness me.
Yeah, and that technology company was absolutely amazing. It was founded by the amazing entrepreneur Vijay Rao. But the model that we use there is what I teach at RedBeard to small businesses, and it's fire. It's like magic.
So it's like almost like a blueprint of how you attract, you retain, you train, you develop, and then you can scale your business. And then ultimately, if that is what you want to do and you want to sell, that's incredible. So
Exactly.
this is one of the I think the enduring things about this podcast is that, so many recruiters, which is tends to be those that do choose to take their time to listen to podcasts, want to do better, and they want to do better and not be the dog shit contingent recruiter that's just, smash and grab, slinging mud at the wall. And that's not, like you say, it's not, we're not the victim of, well, we're not the factor of this, we're just the victim of a broken system. So when I interview someone that, is a management consultant, which is ultimately what I think a recruiter should be for the businesses that they partner and for the, peer style candidates that they take through a career journey. And I think more recruiters that are listening to this right now would love to know how they can do that. Let's say they're working in a recruitment agency that, maybe they do some retained, maybe they're doing something where it's not so horrifically contingent. But what can a recruiter do to genuinely elevate their own expertise to be being seen and regarded like a management consultant?
Great question. And the answer is unfortunately very simple. They need to be a management consultant. I don't mean that they need to go to Harvard or Yale and get a master's degree. No. I mean, they need to learn the business, the niche that they work.
Yeah.
And they need to be able to speak to the hiring managers about the things that they care about.
Okay.
Again, I work mostly in tech. In technology, this is a gross generality, just like our moms told us not to do. But just the same, most folks get into tech because they want to make cool shit, not because they want to work with people. The HR function of a technology leader's job is typically the thing they're least enamored with. It's what they want to do least of all. So if you give them half a chance, they will gleefully cede that to you because they hate it. But they also know that the quality of the talent that you bring them is the biggest predictor of their success or failure. So you have to prove to them that you understand. The way that you do that is you understand what's in it for them, what they need from this person to succeed. You understand their metrics, and you understand what they need from the people that they're bringing in, the teams that they're building. And that goes beyond talent skill matching, especially in a world where AI is starting to dominate. If we allow our industry to devolve into word matching, we're done. We're out.
Yeah, I agree.
So we have to understand what that manager needs to succeed in their team, and we need to make sure that person, skills aside, is that match. So it's crazy. Super simple questions like, so Lisha, what are you looking for in your next role? Not the skills, but what are you looking to develop?
Yeah.
What does the step after that look like for you?
Yeah.
What are your career
goals?
Yeah, because if your skills align, but your career path doesn't, you're going to walk as soon as a real career path does. And never mind the guarantee, it'll happen outside the guarantee period. But how blessed do you think that manager is going to feel when, 91 days later they leave and,
the rebate's done
with that person again? Not ever.
I mean, when you've just said those questions, I mean, that to me is exactly what recruiters should be asking.
You're right.
It should be the emotive questions and the questions where you get to know the person and, not just the facts. The facts you can get off a CV, resume, their profile. That's not going to tell you anything about what's going to drive this individual to be a success in that role. So maybe recruiters we need to go back a step and just train them how to ask good questions and what a good question looks like.
Right, but not to harp on this, but a big part of the problem is again the contingency model. Because as somebody who's run contingency agencies, we're very metrics driven with our recruiters. Lisha, I need you to have X conversations and Y interviews and Z submittals in order to get this outcome. I know the numbers of that. So that recruiter feels a time pressure to get to submit or no submit with a candidate. So what do they cut? The soft questions.
Yeah.
Again, recruiters aren't the villain here. It's the model sucks. The model is actively bad for literally everyone involved. The reason why, in my experience, clients are afraid of other models is they don't want to pay for something they wind up getting because they see recruiters as at best a necessary evil and a less than service. But the problem, the less than service exists because of the model they're using. It's such a chicken egg thing.
I know it's a chicken and egg when you're saying it. It's like, so can we just press Control Alt Delete and go back to about 70 years ago when the recruitment model was kind of forming, I suppose? Because I think that the way you describe it is the way it should always be done. But I think you're right, the perception, and then we're almost fulfilling our own prophecy by just, conforming to it and conforming to this, well, we haven't got time to do that. I need to get the numbers out. I need to do these 50 calls today. I need to just get the skills on the database and then send them over to my client instead of going, right, just stop. Let's really think about what we're doing here. So, I mean, in your opinion then, how do, we've got leaders listening, we have a lot of leaders that drop in and listen, which is fantastic. And their market is potentially overcrowded. Most are saturated, most are. It's possibly driven by price, possibly. Maybe it's a very candidate short market. Let's hope so, because that's always better when particularly in the STEM sectors. Yeah. What can they do? What can recruitment leaders do that are simple to, and we're not talking about going out and spending thousands of pounds, but what can you do in terms of a recruitment leader to just tweak what they're doing to train their staff in how to create this management consultant mindset?
Yeah, there's a couple of things. The first is if they're established and have a book of business, go to their existing clients and pitch them ideas.
Okay.
Pretending you're that person. So, Lisha, we've been working together for 2 years. We placed, 17 people with your company, and we use a contingency model. Here's the problem I have. You have no skin in the game, and you work with several agencies, which means that I have to charge more than what I would like to charge you in order to make the money I need. Would you be interested in hearing about how we could provide a better service for less money to you? What sane manager is going to say no to that? So now think of a creative way to do that. And that's probably more than we have time for today, but I'd be happy to talk about it on another episode.
Of course.
But pitch them something creative. If you don't have that book of business, then when you get further in cycle with the contingency fill, start to talk to that manager. Lisha, I hope you've seen the quality we bring to the table. Let me ask you a question. If things work out and you hire this person, it's going to be $20,000, whatever the number is. Ask you a question. If we could apply that money to a longer term relationship that reduces your risk and reduces your expense, would that be something you're interested in hearing about?
Of course.
Yeah. So in other words, don't ask ahead of time. Show them you've got game. Show them that you can give them a positive outcome, and then repurpose the money they're already going to spend.
Yeah, where they feel like they're getting a value.
Exactly.
I think that's the thing, isn't it? You're not saying, oh, you normally, it's contingency, no win, no fee. You're almost like unselling yourself before you've even started.
Exactly.
I think it's I actually think that's really simple. And I think there'll be loads of people that will be thinking, right, even if you've got one client you can do that with, right? It means it's guaranteed income. It's the beginning.
Get the success with that one client. Now you've got social proof you can use with others. But one other thing real quick before we move on for this. Nothing we do is complicated. Recruiting's not hard. That's actually part of the problem. Part of the problem with recruiting is that the barrier for entry is so low. You and I both got into this by accident. Neither one of us woke up and were like, oh, I can't wait to be a recruiter today. That's not the way it started. We started, we fell in love with it, and we're here 20 years later. Or we're addicts, it could be. But
possibly both.
Here we are. But the problem with the low barrier entry is there's always somebody out there who shouldn't be, who sucks. That's
of course
for the rest of us. So we can't make the mistake of asking for that commitment before we've shown something. It'd be like me asking you to marry me when I picked you up for our first date. That doesn't make any sense. So we've got to show some history of success, then we ask for the commitment. And that's the key to having success with transitioning people's thinking.
Yeah, and I think you're right. I mean, just to harbour that point, I think that as a rec obviously that's my day. Well, I don't know if you know that, but that is my day job. I recruit recruiters, and I do think I'm the barrier. I think all rec should be the barrier, because there is no, necessary qualification or tenure necessary to be in recruitment. There are still swarms of people that come into our industry that fall into it in the way we did, but in different ways, from different career paths. But I'm pleased to say that I've seen a real trend in recent years where it is now a chosen industry, and that is down to the education piece around it being more of a management consultancy, and it's the meritocracy. It's, you know, an incredible career opportunity as an industry in itself. But I think you're absolutely right, and I think so often recruiters think they can exploit a relationship to try and get seller retainer to go, right, I've got that on my figures and now I just couldn't give a shit whether I fill it or not. And that's where there's the risk, but it goes right back to hiring the right people in the first place for our industry
100%.
that will have the right morals and that see that bigger picture. I think we could talk about this all day and all night but I think the simple point is that it's about creating meaningful relationships, and you'll know when you're listening to this now, you will know which relationships you can go and speak to, or you should know. And if you're not hands-on as a leader, then shame on you. You should know who those clients are.
And you're the problem.
You are the problem. You are the problem. You
Yes.
are the problem, without a shadow of a doubt. Now, I have noticed, and if anyone is watching over on YouTube, you will notice a very well-positioned item next to Gerry in yellow, a book.
How could that have happened?
Absolutely no idea how that landed there. I can't believe you didn't send one to me in advance, and I could have held it up, or I should have bought it off Amazon. So it is a #1 bestseller on how we should attract, recruit, and retain the best talent. So I like things in threes. That sounds wrong, actually. That's a different podcast show. How should recruitment leaders ensure that they are? Let's focus on attraction, because there's always a bit of a, you know, bottleneck, let's say, of trying to attract the right people. And this follows on, it's a nice segue from what we've just been talking about. So if you've got an audience now with just one recruitment leader, how do they attract the right talent to their business?
Great question. You actually already said something that's relevant to this, and that's the right person. You and I have been doing this for decades, and I'm sure you're going to agree with what I'm saying before I even say it, and that's this. There in all the placements I've done over the years, thousands at this point, there are far more bad matches than there are bad candidates and bad companies. That's where the problem usually lies.
Yeah.
When you're on the attraction phase, you have to ascertain in your organization what a good match is. So skill set aside, what is the emotional makeup of this person? What is my environment? What is my real culture? Not what I have written on a board behind my desk. What's my real culture? What is it like to work here? And then you have to create branding that reflects that. So the right person is attracted to you and the wrong person is repelled. Once you understand what that is, the second thing you need to know is where your folks hang out. You know, are they on LinkedIn? Is there a particular user group? Is there a conference or an association that they're at? That's where you create your presence. So attraction is all about understanding who your ideal candidate is and then being where they are. But at its most basic, it's about creating a reputation where people can rapidly advance their careers. So here in the United States, it might be, I'm sorry for the US references, it's where I do most of my business. If you're in technology, it might be Apple or OpenAI or Google. If you're in academia, it might be Harvard or Yale or MIT. Yes. If you're in management consulting, it might be McKinsey or Bain, or, you know, or one of those companies. I know if I go there, I'm 10xing my career. Yeah. So you establish that reputation, you put it in the right place where those folks are, and you know who those folks are. That's how you create that attraction.
Yeah, I think I just want to have a caveat with that. And I mean, if anyone's listening from your Googles and AIs and all the big, huge brands, then that's fantastic. But I think within your own microcosm, it's important to have authentic values. Because 100%. If you try, I mean, we're all trying to punch above our weight all the time, aren't we? Because that's ultimately what we're doing in recruitment. But I think you can elevate your brand, but actually it's got to mean something. And if you are trying to attract people that are, you know, are authentic to themselves, they'll see right through if it's all bullshit. Yes. You know, you have to be true to yourself. And, you know, I've always, you know, I remember a competitor of mine dismissing the fact that I worked from home at the time, and this was before COVID when not many people did, and he was trying to diss me to a client, and the client rang me and said, oh, he's been saying really nasty things about it. And I actually rang him up and I was like, why is that a problem to you that I work from home? I said, I've got 2 small kids at the time I did. They're older now, they're grown up. You know, and he said, well, I've got this £1 million office. And I was like, it just doesn't matter. It doesn't make any difference. Yeah. I'm attracting 100% of my business inbound, which I still do to this day. And he actually ended up, he's not in the business anymore. I don't know where he is. So I just think do unto others, but be true to yourself with that brand. That's what I would add as a caveat to what Gerry's just said.
Yeah, so he's probably out of business from the rent for that £1 million place that he had. But what you said about being true, that's part of reputation. So you broke out attraction, but understand attraction is phase 1, recruitment is phase 2, retention is phase 3. It's a virtuous circle.
Michael, yeah.
If you do a great job attracting, but you suck at recruiting, that's where it ends. If you do a great job at attracting, you do a great job at recruiting, but you're a garbage place to work, that's where it ends. But if you do it right, it becomes a virtuous cycle.
What would you say to I've got a real sort of thorn in my side as a rec to rec, which is Glassdoor. And I personally, when I'm engaging with a new client, which typically is somebody that's referred to me, because I actually don't do any cold outreach, which my model has really worked over the last 20 years. But I'll, build a relationship, do all my research, but I don't go on Glassdoor in the same way that if I'm going to a nice restaurant that a friend's been to, I don't go on TripAdvisor. I go off my friend's recommendation, right? What would your advice be to potential job seekers listening who are recruiters about, let's say Glassdoor, and 80% of the recommendations are good, and then the 20% that are saying don't go and work here? What would your balance view be? And I know this is a very hypothetical question. It's not a real company.
But here's the thing. So it depends what the negative is. So we all know that as human beings, we're more likely to complain than praise. It's in our nature. We can have 20 positive events, 1 negative one, we bitch about the negative one. So that's just people being people. So if 80% is positive and 20 is bad, I would care what the bad is. And I would also look like, is this person being hyperbolic? Because if I get fired for cause, I'm probably going to be pretty extreme in my feedback. So again, that's something to take in mind, looking at the breadth of things. But if that one negative is something that's a hot button for me, then that's a big negative. So that's something. And then the final piece, I don't shy away from it. I'm going to talk to the person. Hey, I'm excited about potentially working here. And as somebody who looks at jobs long term, I did some research and reviews, and there was this negative review. Can we talk about it?
I'm so pleased you've said that, because I always recommend people bring out elephants in the room, whether that's the client has seen has heard of a reputation or something like that. Don't not deal with it. Like, bring it out into the conversation. And actually, I always find it very interesting how people deal with that, if it is face-to-face or if it's on a video call, because that's also very telling if they acknowledge it and how they've responded to it. I know you can respond on Glassdoor. I've had a situation with a candidate recently, and it was probably around that ratio. 80% were all great, and then 20% there were a few scathing reviews, but actually she dug deeper into what those reasons were, and she went, actually none of those things actually bother me, because they were moaning about, it was like having to be in the office. Well, she actually likes being in the office. Moaning about the fact that the leadership team are not very on hand. She actually wants to go somewhere where she can just be left alone. So I think it's about context. That's what you're saying, isn't it?
100%, yes. And you also bring up an important point. So part of my service is brand monitoring for just that reason. You should be aware as a company what's being said about you. And being responsive and replying, don't be defensive. If you screwed up, own it. Absolutely. That is such an incredible. Again, I've been in business. There's companies I've worked with for decades. Things sometimes happen in business. Not everything goes the way you'd like it to be. The measure isn't that a mistake happened. The measure is what you do when the mistake happened. That's the quality of your. I
agree. That is such a valid thing to say. And I think, that says so much about your integrity. So is there a new book coming now that you've got this one to number 1?
Gosh, that was plenty of work for me for a while. So it did really great. But what we did do with it is we launched a destination employer program to help startups, early stage businesses, and small businesses to adopt and implement everything in the book in a self-paced program. And it ends with some time with me, so I can answer any implementation questions. I can answer any questions they have about anything.
Amazing.
So the program we're super excited about, destinationemployer.co. I can't wait to see. It's just literally the hard launches in a couple of weeks. So,
and is that going to be to customers specifically in America, or is that to anyone anywhere?
Anyone, anywhere. It's denominated in US dollars, so keep that in mind as you're contemplating expense, but it's available anywhere. It's at destinationemployer.co.
Well, if you are listening now and you are interested to know more, drop Gerry a note, and please remember to mention the Recruiters Recruitment Podcast so he knows exactly where you've come from, because you've given your time for us today, and we could literally have talked all day. And I'd just like to say we never got to see your surprise guest or hear your surprise guest.
It's because we mentioned it. He only chimes in when he's uninvited. He's a rude boy.
I think we should have a little game actually on the post. Like, what animal do you think we're talking about? Do you think we're talking about a crocodile, a snake, or a parrot? Well, answers on a postcard to Scotland.
I will bring him on physically the next time.
Yeah, I was going to say next time you come up to the Highlands. Gerry, it's been an absolute joy. I could literally talk to you all day. I feel like I have, because we've already been on. This is our second platform today. Don't even go there, guys. With what technical problems I've had recording this particular season. But thank you for joining us all the way from 100 miles. Is it out of Boston? No, yes. An hour out of Boston. 100 miles from Boston. Where do you actually live? What's the place called?
It's called Dudley. It's a little town in the country, right on the border of Massachusetts and Connecticut.
Well, you know, we have a Dudley over here, but you have to go Dudley in the West Midlands near Birmingham.
Do you use it as a local or tourist test? So here we have Worcester. Everybody not from here calls it Worcester.
Oh my God.
Everybody local calls it Worcester. So it's how we know if they're local or not.
Well, I mean, there's so many different dialects in the UK for the size of the country that we are compared to the United States of America. But I don't feel like I'm being disingenuous to people from the West Midlands, because I started my recruitment career in the West Midlands. Nice. And lived actually in a place called Cannock, which was called Yam Yam Land, because they have very broad Black Country accents. And Dudley, obviously, you know, a lot of place names in America came from over here. Well, Dudley, we've all heard it. So if you're listening from Dudley in the West Midlands, drop Gerry a message. You should do a little bit of twinning going on. Well, it's been so lovely, and I really hope that our audience have enjoyed and benefited from your amazing expertise. Thank you so much for joining us today, Gerry.
Thanks for having me. It was great.